The complete story of Abraham. Long ago, in a world still young and filled with many tribes and kingdoms, there lived a man named Abraham. At the time, he was known as Abram. He lived in a city called Ur, a place filled with wealth, culture, and idol worship. But Abram was different. Deep within him was a heart that longed for truth, a desire to know the one true God. One day, everything changed. God spoke to Abram. It wasn't a whisper or a dream that could be ignored, it was a calling that would reshape history forever. God said, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great." This was no small request. Abram was being asked to leave everything familiar, his home, his culture, his security, and step into the unknown. Yet Abram obeyed. At 75 years old, he gathered his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, and set out on a journey guided only by faith. The journey of faith. Abram traveled to the land of Canaan, a place God promised to give to his descendants. When he arrived, God appeared to him again and said, "To your offspring, I will give this land." Abram believed, even though he had no children. He built altars wherever he went, worshipping God and marking the places where God spoke to him. But the journey wasn't always easy. A famine struck the land, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt. Fear crept into his heart. He worried that because Sarai was beautiful, others might kill him to take her. So he told her to say she was his sister. This decision brought trouble. Pharaoh took Sarai into his palace, but God intervened, sending plagues upon Pharaoh's household. Realizing the truth, Pharaoh returned Sarai and sent Abram away. Despite Abram's mistake, God remained faithful. Abram and Lot separate. As Abram grew richer in livestock, silver, and gold, conflict arose between his herdsmen and those of his nephew Lot. The land could not support them both. Rather than fight, Abram chose peace. He gave Lot the first choice of land. Lot chose the fertile plains near the city of Sodom, unaware of its wickedness. Abram remained in Canaan. Once again, God reaffirmed his promise to Abram. "All the land you see I will give to you and your descendants forever." Still, Abram had no child. God's covenant. Years passed, and Abram began to wonder. How could he become a great nation without an heir? One night, God spoke to him in a vision and said, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." Abram replied honestly, "What can you give me since I remain childless?" God took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. So shall your offspring be." Abram believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Then God made a covenant with him, a sacred promise, declaring that Abram's descendants would inherit the land, though they would face hardship first. The birth of Ishmael. Time continued to pass, and Sarai remained barren. In her impatience, she suggested that Abram have a child through her servant Hagar. Abram agreed. Hagar gave birth to a son named Ishmael. But this decision created tension and pain within the household. Though Ishmael would be blessed, he was not the child God had promised. A new name, a new promise. When Abram was 99 years old, God appeared to him again and said, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully." Then God changed his name from Abram, meaning exalted father, to Abraham, meaning father of many nations. Sarai's name was also changed to Sarah. God promised that Sarah herself would bear a son. Abraham laughed, not out of disbelief alone, but amazement. Sarah was old, far beyond childbearing years. Yet nothing is impossible for God. The visitors and the promise. One day, 3 visitors came to Abraham's tent. He welcomed them with great hospitality. During their visit, they repeated God's promise. Sarah will have a son. Sarah overheard and laughed quietly to herself. But the visitors said, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Soon after, the promise came true. The birth of Isaac. At last, in her old age, Sarah gave birth to a son. They named him Isaac, which means laughter, because of the joy and disbelief that surrounded his birth. God had fulfilled his promise. The test of faith. Years later, God tested Abraham in a way that would become one of the most powerful moments in history. God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering." This command was heartbreaking. Isaac was the promised child, the miracle. Yet Abraham obeyed. He took Isaac, gathered wood, and journeyed to the place God had shown him. As they climbed the mountain, Isaac asked, "Father, where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham replied, "God himself will provide the lamb." When they reached the place, Abraham built an altar and bound Isaac. Just as he raised the knife, an angel of the Lord called out, "Abraham! Do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know that you fear God." God had never intended for Isaac to be sacrificed. It was a test of faith. Nearby, a ram was caught in a thicket. Abraham offered it instead. God provided. The legacy of Abraham. God reaffirmed his promise once more. "Through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed." Abraham lived a long life, witnessing the beginnings of that promise. He became known as the father of faith, a man who trusted God even when the path made no sense. After Sarah passed away, Abraham ensured she was buried with honor. He later remarried and had more children, but Isaac remained the child of promise. Finally, Abraham died at a good old age, full of years, leaving behind a legacy that would shape the world forever. The meaning of his story. Abraham's story is not just about one man, it's about faith, obedience, and trust. He left everything he knew for a promise he could not yet see. He waited decades for a child. He faced tests that would break most people. Yet through it all, he believed. And because he believed, generations were changed forever.